I want to give you 10 pieces of advice after 10 years of me making music. In this video, I'm not going to be going into anything technical. This is more going to be about creativity and longevity in the music industry. I've been working in the audio industry for 10 years, obviously releasing music, doing shows, teaching on YouTube or at schools like SAE. I've done sound design for companies like Cymatics. I've done a really wide range of things. It hasn't been without its ups and downs, but for that reason, I feel I have some advice to offer, especially to new producers or producers who are early in their journey. This is obviously personal advice based off my personal experience, so it's probably not going to apply to everyone. And again, this isn't going to be technical, so if you want more technical tips, let me know in the comments if that's something you'd like. If you get any sort of value out of this video, please share it with a friend and stick around to the end because I'm going to share what I consider to be the most valuable piece of information, whether you're a musician or not. Okay, first tip, double down on your strengths and forget about your weaknesses. It's a lot more fun and a lot more effective to double down on things that you consider yourself good at or actually enjoy instead of trying to fix all these little problem areas that you think you might have. You're going to get far greater results investing that energy into what you are passionate about, what you are strong at, versus putting all this effort into improving things about yourself that just might be very challenging to do or not as beneficial as doubling down on your strengths. For example, with myself, I realized early on that I really enjoyed sound design and I really enjoyed mixing. Whereas something like music theory, I kid you not, I've tried to learn music theory 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times, months at a time, and I'll retain a lot, I'll enjoy it for a time, and then the second I stop practicing every day, I start to forget it, and then I feel like I'm back to ground zero. Now that isn't to say something as valuable as music theory isn't something you should learn or try learning, but I also don't beat myself up about it if I end up spending that time on something I really enjoy, like sound design or engineering or more of the technical side of production. That's also benefited me in terms of work, where a lot of the work I do is mixing or mastering or production for other artists, which if that isn't your strength, you can get more information on that in the description of this video. Or again, something like sound design where I've gone and worked and done sound design for other companies. So that's tip 1. Tip number 2, not every song has to be your best, so start sketching. One thing that would paralyze me from writing music is when I felt like every time I sat down, I had to write something good, if not better than something I've already put out, or I feel like I have to write some sort of masterpiece. And I know a lot of other people where that way of thinking paralyzes them as well. So what I recommend doing is just reframing what you're doing when you sit down to write and calling it sketching. I even have a folder on my computer called Sketches, where when I sit down to write a song, I call it sketch hyphen this. Then when I sit down, it has no weight to it. It actually is a lot like when I was in high school, I would just be doodling all day long in class. I didn't give a damn about any of those drawings because they were just for drawing, they were just for fun. If you approach music that way, it really takes the pressure off. And in my opinion, to get to the point of writing a good track, you have to write a lot of bad music. You have to create a lot of bad ideas. Tip 3, separate sound design, writing, mixing, and mastering, but also don't. You've probably heard that it's important to separate these steps, to do sound design in one session, sit down to write, only focus on writing. When the song's done, only focus on mixing, and then at the end, focus on mastering. Although I completely agree that it is important to do this so that when you are sitting down to write or sketch, it's just way easier for you to focus on just that. In, say, electronic music especially, sound design and mixing is a vital part of the writing process. So although I do recommend having a formal session where you mix down your track after, don't be afraid to do sound design and mixing in the writing phase and considering it writing. There's a lot of times where you want a very specific bass sound or bass movement or bass pattern that you just don't have laying around. Obviously, you're going to have to create that. If you're creating like an old school future bass song with that like plonk type of snare and you don't have that, having that in your song is going to change how you write. If you have like a white noise kind of narrow bass and you're scooping out a huge amount of the mids, that's going to affect how you add other elements. So do sound design sessions, do writing sessions, do a formal mixing session. I always do turn off every element of my track and rebuild the mix because it is going to sound way better that way for me personally, and then master at the end. But also don't be afraid to do sound design or mixing if you consider it writing. So separate the steps, but also don't. Number 4, block off large chunks of time for songwriting and don't quit just because you're not writing something good. Kind of building off of what I just talked about separating those sessions and when you're writing, doing sketches, I think it's important when you are going to write a song to have a big chunk of time set aside. The reason for that is when you're trying to write music, you're trying to capture this emotion, this feeling. And if you break that into too many little sessions, the song's going to probably feel very disjointed. Maybe your goal isn't to finish the whole song in one sitting, but I like to think that you're trying to capture the core 80% of the track, the skeleton of the track within that writing session. Because the last 20% is going to take 80% of the effort. And sometimes that's even good to come back to with fresh ears, at least for me personally. But capturing that core idea is important you do it in one sitting. When I have one of these writing sittings, say like 2 to 8 hours blocked off, it is very easy for me to get discouraged if these sketches I'm working on are sounding bad. If you have this time set aside though, I recommend you don't stop writing for that set of time, no matter how frustrated you are, because you never know which sketch is going to turn into a good song. And this happens to me often. For example, I just released a track called Visual not too long ago, and that was the final sketch in a series of songs where I was getting so frustrated. I was writing all these different sketches. They were sounding really bad. And then I landed upon this one vocal sample. And then boom, it just triggered a small little bass riff. And it was really simple. It came together really quickly, or at least the 80% of the song came together really quickly. And had I quit, and I was just about to quit, that song would have never come. So block off big chunks of time so you can really get in the songwriting mode. Don't worry too much about mixing. Don't worry about sound design unless it's part of the writing. Don't get discouraged and keep writing for that allotted time. 5, get your most important tasks done first in the day. I'm not even just talking about songwriting anymore. This is just in terms of career and creativity. It is so easy to get swept up in our to-do lists. I'm sure your to-do list is infinite. So it's really important for you to prioritize and figure out, I usually like to the day before at least, figure out what is the most important thing I need to do right now for my career. And the next day, that is the first thing I do. I try not to look at my phone. I try not to look at social media. It's really sitting down. This is the first thing I'm doing. I'm not worrying about anything else. Right now, while I'm filming this video, this is my most important task today. I woke up, did my morning routine, and now I'm recording this video. Even though there's a million other things I have to do, I consider this the most important thing right now. I'm sure a lot of you are kind of night owls and your creativity doesn't start to blossom until the evening. So this may not apply to you, but in my opinion, get the most important task done first, and then everything else feels good after that. Number 6, cherish your downtime as much as your music making time. As you learn to kind of block off these bigger chunks of time for music, it can become very sacred, very valuable to you. You might cherish this time that you get to be creative, and you might start to cherish it too much above other things. At least for myself, I know that I kind of glorified this music writing time, but downtime is so important too. Spending time with loved ones, spending time with friends, spending time with your pets, playing, having fun, cooking, resting. Yes, there might be times where you feel you can just go. You're always creating music. You're always posting on social media. You're grinding, and hustle culture is very glorified and sexy. But I think that, in my opinion, there's so much more to life, and that enjoying being present and attentive during your downtime is just as valuable. And I'm not just talking within a single day. I'm not just talking work time during the morning and an hour of TV at night. This could be really large cycles. I mean, there are points in my life where there have been months where I just don't feel very creative, or maybe my creativity feels more engaged in a different activity, like making a YouTube video like this. And I think within those cycles, it's just important to, cherish those times as well. If you're going to take time off, take time off. Don't take time off and then be thinking about all these things you have to do. Take a few days off, take a week off. If that's what you need to do to not burn out, cherish that time. And then when you go back to music later, you'll have that much more to write about. You'll be that much more engaged. I think just, either within the day or within weeks or months, cycling these periods of really hard work and rest is what allows for longevity. I think when one gets sucked up in this constant hustle and grind, that can really burn you out. And if that means things have to take a bit longer, I think it's healthier, unless you're really good at handling this overexertion, grind, endless work. But most people, especially really sensitive artists, it's important to take downtime and to really rest and engage in that downtime. Okay, 7, be clear about why you're making music or why you're making art. This can take a lot of self-reflection to truly realize why you're making something, but the why is very important. A lot of people say they're making music for themselves. If that's true, if you really mean it, like just really don't give a damn what people think about your music and just make the weirdest, craziest, most personal music you can. If you have the audience in mind, if you're making music that's also for people to dance to at a show and you don't want it to be too weird, understand that. If you want to be making a lot of money making music and you want to do something a bit more commercial, don't lie to yourself about that. Strategize and plan around that. If it's somewhere in the middle where you want a sustainable career, but you want really self-expressive music, that might take some sort of thought and planning to it as well. Is it purely a hobby, and you don't care about a career? That can alleviate a lot of stress about how others are going to think about it or the social media side of things. The why can also, just really help you determine what path you're going to go down, and it is very much subject to change year by year, quarter by quarter, and that's okay. Okay, number 8, develop a healthy relationship with social media. I've gone through every cycle with social media. I've gone from really studying it, posting consistently, tracking numbers, figuring out what posts are doing well, to literally just taking months off where I absolutely detest it. I've deleted every app from my phone. I have like app blockers on my computer. And although I would probably say I've definitely been the happiest in my life with the latter, I think if building a music career is something you care about, there's definitely a happy medium where you control your phone, it doesn't control you. Firstly, I think it's just important to reframe your thoughts around it. You want to think of it as something fun, an extension of your creativity, something social, something playful, a way of sharing your work. You really want to get in the habit of sharing and getting off and not being on for too long. Building on top of the doing your most important things first in the day. I also recommend if you're going to be on social media and you want time to still do other things with your career, limiting it to once a day I think is really powerful. Like once a day you go on, you reply to notifications or messages or emails, you create that post and share it, you study any stats or have whatever fun you want with it, and get off as soon as you can. And just building this healthy relationship with it where you're not obsessively checking without being aware that you're checking. I also recommend for content creation, if you have the ability or if it pertains to what you're doing what's known as batching. So for example, with tutorials, I'll often like to record a few tutorials in a go, edit it all in one go, and create the thumbnails all in one go, and then schedule it all out in one go. This can apply to creating several TikToks at once, creating a bunch of text posts at once. And, obviously it's not going to pertain where you have an idea and you want to post it, or you just took a photo and you want to post it. But I just think in terms of, the startup cost mentally, it's just way easier to, batch, just set like even a week where you create for a week, you create content, and then you could feed that over 2 months or a quarter or something like that. Again, not always possible, but for me, that really helps with this kind of feeling like I have to post something regularly or have to post something every day or every other day, which can be very taxing on the mind. If you have just like a backlog ready to go, it makes it a lot easier. And then it makes it so much easier to just get on, post, get off. 9, this is going to sound really generic, but take good care of your health. Prioritize taking good care of your health. Music is not the most important thing in this world, and your health and wellness affects every aspect of your life. And it's very easy to put it on the back burner when you're trying to build a career or create as much as possible. Now, I'm not here to preach. I'm not an expert. And not to mention, health is such an abstract term. What does that actually mean? But speaking from experience, some of the worst times of my life is when my physical health and mental health were both not a priority, both affect each other so deeply. Where some of the happiest, most creative, most present times of my life are also when I'm paying the most attention to my physical well-being. And the last point is to start practicing mindfulness. Mindfulness practice isn't about improving yourself or your abilities or your creativity, although those are benefits. It's about living a more meaningful and fulfilling life. Mindfulness applies to everyone, but as musicians, we identify deeply with our music. We use our bodies, our minds, and our deepest emotions to create art, and we can become very attached and entangled with that. Because of that, we also often suffer acute stress, doubt, loneliness, fatigue, addiction, and so on. And mindfulness can help with all of these issues, but the real implications extend far beyond our personal and creative lives. Along the path, you might discover a lot more creativity, more concentration, more compassion, better relationships, more ease in the world. But what you're truly aiming to do is gain clearer understanding of the nature of your mind and to discover insights and truths that would otherwise remain hidden. I'm no mindfulness teacher, and me just trying to explain it to you won't really do anything. It's something you have to experience yourself. I spent most of my life mindlessly being swept around, but nonetheless, I can't recommend you start a mindfulness practice enough. So if you're interested in learning more, I'm actually going to leave a link to the Waking Up app and a 30-day trial down below where you can take their introductory course. This is not a sponsored video by any means. I'm not affiliated with Waking Up. I just believe that the insights and skills that you can gain are worthwhile and have the opportunity to radically change the way you live your life. So those were 10 tips for music producers after 10 years of releasing music. Again, if you want a more technical video, let me know in the comments, and that's something I will consider. And if you learned anything in this video, please consider sharing it with a friend. I want people to benefit from this as much as possible. And if you have any advice for any musicians on their journey, drop some tips down below. I'd love to see what sort of advice you have for musicians in terms of longevity and creativity in their career. So thank you for watching this video, embarking on your own journey. I hope it brings you joy and joy to others. All the best. Thank you. See you.